When a woman decides to live without sex, something within her begins to settle. In this silence, a great energy starts to build. Her attention, no longer pulled outward, starts to return home. She is no longer seeking warmth from outside, because a deeper fire has begun to burn inside her. It is quiet but strong. She begins to feel herself more completely, not as an object of desire, but as the source of life. She recognizes that the body is not just for pleasure. It is a temple for discipline, balance, and awakening. Abstaining does not make her cold, it makes her clear. When she steps back from the rush of desire, she begins to see what was hidden. She begins to notice where she gave too much, where she confused intimacy with approval, where she let her softness be mistaken for weakness. Without sexual distraction, the mind opens, the breath deepens, the emotions become calm like a still lake. And from that stillness, wisdom rises. She begins to ask herself questions she had never paused long enough to consider. What do I truly want? What kind of energy do I invite? Who deserves my time, my touch, my truth? Without sex, she does not shrink. She expands. Her energy, once divided, now becomes concentrated. Like water that is no longer leaking through cracks, her power starts to rise. Her intuition sharpens. She begins to sense people's intentions without words. She no longer moves from craving, but from clarity. She no longer needs validation from the outside world, because she has remembered the deep joy of being with herself. Her creativity awakens. Her dreams return. Her sleep becomes peaceful, and her mornings become purposeful. What happens when a woman lives without sex is not that she becomes less. It is that she becomes whole. She begins to recognize the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is the absence of connection, but solitude is the presence of self. And in this solitude, she meets her truest self, not the one shaped by stories, not the one shaped by pain, but the one who watches it all silently, patiently. She begins to rebuild from there. She stops asking, "Who will love me?" and starts asking, "Who aligns with the love I've cultivated within?" Her boundaries grow firm, not out of fear, but out of respect for the energy she has mastered. She no longer entertains what drains her. She no longer chases what confuses her. She moves slower, but she moves with certainty. She speaks less, but her words carry weight. She touches less, but her presence touches deeply. There is no shame in abstinence. There is strength. There is insight. There is space for transformation. It is a time when the soul cleanses itself from noise, when the body heals from past imprints, when the heart remembers its original rhythm. What happens to a woman who lives without sex is not that she forgets how to connect. It is that she redefines connection on her own terms. She no longer gives her body as a way to earn love. She embodies love, and she allows it to be reflected, not demanded, not stolen, not manipulated, but matched. When a woman chooses to abstain from sex, she initiates a deeply transformative process that begins with the redirection of her inner energy. In a world where constant external stimulation is encouraged and even expected, particularly for women who are taught to derive value from being desired, this decision breaks a powerful pattern. Her energy, which was often scattered in pleasing, pursuing, or being pursued, begins to consolidate. This consolidation is not simply emotional. It is energetic. Life force that once flowed outward toward temporary gratification begins to return to its source. That source is her. The body is a powerful container of energy. Every act, every connection, every intimacy leaves an imprint. When a woman decides to step back from this exchange, She gives herself the chance to reclaim her energy. She is no longer allowing others to tap into her reserves. This makes space for something extraordinary to happen. She begins to build inner mastery. The emotional turbulence often associated with entangled relationships starts to calm down. The hormonal roller coasters caused by irregular connections begin to smooth out. With this physical and emotional stillness, clarity emerges. She starts to feel things she hadn't noticed before. The quality of her breath, the strength of her silence, the pull of her intuition. Her senses, once overwhelmed or numbed, begin to refine themselves. Her perception becomes sharper, and she starts to notice where her energy naturally flows, what uplifts her, what drains her, and what distracts her. This growing awareness allows her to make decisions from a place of strength rather than reaction. The mind benefits greatly from this shift. Freed from the mental loops of romantic obsession, longing, or regret, her thoughts become more centered. She no longer wonders who she is in someone else's eyes. She starts to understand herself from within. The energy that was once spent replaying conversations, decoding messages, or fantasizing about connection is now spent nurturing her personal growth. Her internal dialogue changes. She begins to ask herself deeper questions, ones rooted in self, worth, and purpose, not in comparison or insecurity. The transformation also touches her physical body. With no need to shape herself to meet external expectations, she moves differently. She stands more firmly. Her body language speaks of self-possession rather than seeking approval. Her body becomes something to respect, not something to perform with. Every breath she takes is her own. Every movement she makes is grounded in presence. She begins to relate to herself not as an object, but as a vessel of power. She eats not to impress, but to nourish. She rests not to escape, but to restore. This return to self-mastery also changes the way she experiences time. Moments once rushed or filled with distractions now feel slower and richer. She becomes more patient. She begins to savor solitude. The absence of sexual distraction reveals how much life she had missed while seeking constant connection. Now she finds connection in stillness, in her environment, in her body, in her breath. This opens up a sacred space within her where her true power begins to grow quietly, steadily, unshaken by external forces. Her presence begins to change. Without saying a word, she begins to carry a different energy. Others feel it even if they don't understand it. She is no longer pulled toward validation. She does not give her energy away easily. She becomes more selective, more intentional. This is not out of fear or pride, but because she now understands the value of what she carries inside. Her self-respect becomes non-negotiable. Her boundaries are no longer rules. They are expressions of her inner clarity. When a woman chooses to live without sex, her perception begins to shift. Without the distraction of physical intimacy or the emotional complexities it often brings, she becomes more aware of her surroundings, of the people in her life, and most importantly, of herself. In this space of abstinence, her intuition starts to sharpen. She begins to sense things she once overlooked. The motives behind people's words, the energy behind their presence, and the truth beneath the surface of their actions become increasingly clear to her. Without emotional or physical entanglements clouding her judgment, she starts to see with new eyes. Her emotional clarity improves, and with that comes a renewed ability to draw lines, boundaries that are not based on fear or insecurity, but on respect for her own energy. She no longer tolerates the subtle manipulation that once felt confusing. She no longer rationalizes the disrespect she used to excuse. When she senses an imbalance in someone's intentions, she doesn't question her instinct, she honors it. Her boundaries become a reflection of her self-respect, not a defense mechanism. And the more she lives in alignment with that respect, the more her life begins to feel stable and secure. When sex is taken off the table, relationships are seen for what they truly are. She begins to understand the real dynamics at play, who genuinely values her for her mind, spirit, and energy, and who was only present because of what they could take. This realization may sting at first, but it ultimately empowers her. She no longer feels the need to explain herself, to beg to be understood, or to compromise her peace for temporary closeness. She knows what she's worth, and she no longer settles for connections that feel heavy, unclear, or transactional. Her energy becomes sacred to her. She no longer gives it away freely. She becomes mindful of where she invests her time, her presence, her words, and her touch. She understands that not everyone deserves access to her world, and more importantly, not everyone can hold what she offers. This isn't about superiority, it's about discernment. She learns to observe before she engages. She watches how people behave when they're not getting what they want from her. She listens to what's not said. She trusts the feeling in her gut, even when logic tries to argue otherwise. In this state of heightened awareness, she also becomes deeply aligned with herself. She notices when her energy is expanding and when it is contracting. She sees the subtle difference between someone who drains her and someone who adds peace to her life. And instead of ignoring those signals, she responds to them with wisdom. She no longer fears letting go. She no longer clings to what no longer fits. She releases what is not aligned without guilt, because she understands that protection of her peace is not selfish. It is necessary. This clarity also transforms her communication. She speaks with more intention and listens with more presence. She no longer tries to convince anyone of her worth. Her words are fewer but more meaningful. Her silence becomes powerful, not empty. She no longer fills gaps just to avoid discomfort. She is comfortable with pause. She trusts the timing of things. She has no urge to rush, chase, or prove. She moves with patience because she understands that what is meant for her will come without force. Ultimately, the sharpening of her intuition and the strengthening of her boundaries allow her to move through life with a quiet confidence. She is not closed, she is simply aligned. She is not guarded, she is just aware. She is not bitter, she is wise. Her life no longer revolves around being chosen. Instead, it revolves around choosing herself again and again with clarity, with grace, and with strength. When a woman embraces a life without sex, she steps into a unique space of solitude that begins to reveal its depth over time. At first, the absence of physical connection may feel like a void. There might be echoes of old desires or memories of closeness. But soon she begins to understand that what feels like emptiness is actually space, space for growth, reflection, and inner awakening. In that solitude, she meets herself in ways she never had before. She no longer has to perform, to bend, or to cater to anyone's expectations. There are no distractions, no demands, just presence, and in that presence, something ancient within her begins to stir. She starts to feel her emotions more fully, without needing to explain them to anyone. She observes her own rhythms. The rise and fall of her energy throughout the day, the emotions that flow with the cycles of the moon, the clarity that comes in silence. All of it becomes part of herself, understanding. She realizes how often she had given parts of herself away just to feel connected, just to feel seen. And now, without that external need, she learns to sit with herself, to witness her own unfolding without judgment. There is a deep beauty in this solitude. It's not cold, and it's not lonely. It's honest. It's real. It becomes a sacred retreat from the noise of the world. Instead of reaching outward, she turns inward. She lights a candle not for ambience, but for intention. She walks in nature not for distraction, but for alignment. She breathes not out of habit, but with awareness. Every ordinary act becomes meaningful because she is finally present for her own life. She begins to reconnect with parts of herself she had forgotten. Her childhood dreams, her natural curiosity, her hidden creativity, these start to surface. With no one else's expectations to weigh her down, she rediscovers who she was before the world told her who to be. She might pick up a pen and start writing again. She might dance in her room, not for an audience, but because her body remembers how to express joy. In this return to self, she doesn't just heal, she transforms. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It unfolds slowly, like a seed growing under the soil. At times, it may feel like nothing is happening. But over time, she begins to notice changes in her thoughts, her choices, her energy. She no longer feels the need to rush. She no longer feels urgency in filling her time or seeking validation. She finds peace in the quiet, even in the uncertainty. She realizes that solitude is not something to escape from, it's something to embrace. In this solitude, she also begins to release past attachments. Old wounds, regrets, and painful memories begin to lose their grip on her. She is no longer reliving the past through new connections. She is no longer repeating old patterns. She has the space to observe, to process, and to let go. This kind of healing can only happen when the mind and heart are not occupied with someone else's story. It is deep and it is liberating. She learns how to be whole without being needed. She discovers her completeness, not in the presence of another, but in the presence of her own soul. She becomes her own companion, her own healer, her own guide. There's a quiet dignity in this kind of self-reliance, not because she refuses love, but because she now understands the kind of love she truly deserves, one that honors her peace, one that respects her solitude, one that recognizes her not as someone to be fixed, filled, or saved, but as someone already whole. When a woman withdraws from sexual activity, she unknowingly opens a gateway to reclaim a powerful source of energy within herself. The energy that was once channeled outward, into relationships, into emotional highs and lows, into pleasing others, begins to build and circulate inwardly. This redirection doesn't create stagnation. Instead, it creates movement within. What once was scattered is now concentrated. The vitality that was spent on trying to be enough for others is now being used to fuel her own growth. Her creativity, which may have been buried under emotional exhaustion or physical depletion, starts to rise with new life. She begins to notice that she has more mental space to think clearly, more emotional space to breathe freely. Instead of investing her energy into seeking closeness with another, she begins to pour it into her passions, her goals, and her personal development. She writes, she paints, she builds, she teaches, she creates. There is no longer a draining force pulling from her reserves. Her days feel fuller, not because of what she receives from others, but because of what she generates from within. Her emotional body also begins to stabilize. Sexual intimacy, while beautiful, often comes with a mix of emotional turbulence, attachment, expectation, confusion, and sometimes regret. When she steps away from that, even temporarily, she finds peace in emotional consistency. Her mood no longer fluctuates based on how someone else treats her. Her happiness is no longer contingent on external affection. She becomes the source of her own joy. And in this self-generated joy, she becomes emotionally grounded. That grounding is what gives her the strength to move through life with calmness and grace. She starts to feel stronger in her center. Emotionally, she is no longer easily swayed by compliments or crushed by rejections. Her validation comes from within. She recognizes her worth not because someone else affirms it, but because she sees it clearly in the way she lives, the way she thinks, and the way she treats herself. This self-awareness is what fuels her confidence, not loud, boastful confidence, but the kind that speaks through calm eyes and steady breath. It's the kind of confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. Her spiritual awareness also expands. When physical distraction is removed, something quieter and more profound can be heard. She becomes more in tune with her inner voice, the one that whispers truths when the world is silent. She feels more connected to the natural rhythms of life. She pays attention to the sunrises, to the scent of rain, to the way her body feels in stillness. These are not small things. These are signs that she is coming back into alignment with the present moment, with life as it unfolds, with her own essence. This state of being, centered, focused, creatively alive, emotionally balanced, and spiritually connected, is not accidental. It is the direct result of her decision to pause, to hold her energy close, to be intentional. It is a reflection of the power that lies dormant within every woman until she stops giving it away and decides to keep it, honor it, and grow it. She realizes that her energy is not just a reaction to the world. It is a source that can shape the world around her. She begins to attract different experiences. People are drawn to her calm presence, her light, her focus, her peace. And while the world may not understand this transformation at first, she does. She knows that choosing herself wasn't a rejection of intimacy. It was a return to authenticity. And with every day that she walks this path, her light grows not from external attention, but from internal expansion. Her strength, no longer borrowed or temporary, becomes her own, unshakable and real. When a woman leaves without sex, her entire understanding of connection begins to shift. No longer seeking to feel validated through physical closeness, she starts to redefine what it means to be truly connected. She realizes that real connection does not begin with touch, it begins with truth. It begins with how someone speaks to her spirit, not just her body. It begins with how safe she feels in someone's presence, not how desired she is in their gaze. Without the noise of intimacy clouding her perception, she can see who genuinely honors her and who was only drawn to the surface of her being. This journey teaches her the difference between being needed and being valued. She remembers times when her body was received, but her soul was ignored. She recalls how she once confused attention for affection, or chemistry for compatibility. But now, having reclaimed her energy and removed herself from transactional intimacy, she stands in clarity. She no longer chases love. She no longer begs to be seen. She becomes highly selective, not out of pride, but out of wisdom. She has learned that anyone who does not respect her boundaries does not deserve her presence. Anyone who cannot sit with her in silence does not deserve to stand beside her in celebration. The love she once gave so easily to others, she now gives to herself. She nurtures her inner world, she listens to her needs, and she fulfills them. She becomes her own safe place. The longing that once made her restless becomes a quiet contentment. It's not that she no longer desires connection. It's that she now refuses to lower her frequency to find it. If it is not rooted in respect, truth, and alignment, she simply lets it pass. Her standards rise not because she's hard to please, but because she knows how much she has to offer. This self-respect is not something she wears like armor. It is something that lives in her, silently guiding her choices. It's in the way she walks into a room, not needing to be seen, but impossible to ignore. It's in the way she speaks, not to impress, but to express. It's in the way she loves, not to prove her worth, but to share the abundance already overflowing within her. Her love is no longer a strategy. It is a gift, and she gives it only where it is safe to do so. She becomes a mirror for others. Some will be drawn to her light and inspired to rise. Others will be intimidated by her clarity and quietly fade away. She does not chase, she does not cling. She lets what's meant for her flow naturally into her life. This detachment is not cold, it is peaceful. She no longer has the urge to force things. She has seen what happens when she lets go. She has learned that love, in its purest form, will never ask her to shrink, to hurry, or to abandon herself. In this space she attracts differently. The energy she once used to pursue is now used to magnetize. The relationships she once tolerated now feel too small for her spirit. She no longer wants the kind of connection that burns fast and dies out. She wants depth, she wants growth, she wants companionship that mirrors her own journey inward, and until that connection appears, she is at peace walking alone. Because she is not lonely, she is full, not lacking, just refined. Through abstinence, she doesn't become disconnected from life. She becomes more connected to what is real. Her capacity for love expands because she no longer seeks to be completed by anyone. She is already whole. And now, if someone is to enter her world, it is not to fill a space. It is to walk beside her with presence, with intention, and with deep reverence for the woman she has become. The journey of a woman who lives without sex is not about denial. It is about rediscovery. In choosing to withdraw from external desire, she reconnects with her own energy, her own truth, and her own purpose. What the world once taught her to seek outside, she now finds within. She gains clarity in her thoughts, strength in her emotions, and discipline in her spirit. She learns to set boundaries, not to push others away, but to protect the peace she has worked so hard to cultivate. In her solitude she finds wisdom. In her stillness she finds power. And in the absence of distraction, she creates space for her most authentic self to rise. She does not reject intimacy, she simply transforms it. She reclaims her right to connect with others from a place of self-respect rather than need. She stops performing, pleasing, or proving. She no longer views love as something to earn, but as something to reflect. And from this reflection, she begins to attract what truly honors her essence. She becomes the embodiment of calm, focused, and conscious energy. Her silence carries weight. Her presence speaks for itself. And when the right connection arrives, it will not be to complete her, but to walk alongside her in full recognition of the powerful, awakened woman she has become. This is not a path of isolation. It is a path of return to herself, to her truth, to her wholeness. She is no longer seeking to be desired. She has become the desire.